Time for the second round of the 50,000 subscribers special Q&A. Plenty more to answer, so here we go. From what country does your wonderful accent originate? How many times do I have to say it? Estonia. I adore your channel, your wit, your accent and your voice. Ah, you're too kind. I adore your comment. My questions are, do you like horror movies? If yes, what do you think makes a good one? I do, and I did make a video about it. It's a style analysis and not necessarily what makes a good one. Though being directed like a horror movie helps. Like every movie, horror needs great characters. People you don't want to see cut to pieces. Characters who are not idiots who make dumb decisions are also a fine idea. Having a villain or a threat that's original maybe. Something that sounds impossible to survive. I'm not coming up with anything groundbreaking here. What inspired you to make this critical contribution to film studies? And what keeps you going? What do you need from us? I wanted to make the type of videos that I always dreamed of watching to learn about cinema, but didn't exist. I basically got tired of learning cinema through one specific vague lessons that were obviously subjective and based on random interpretation. And I wanted it to be funny. And money helps. I have a theory and my question is, do you agree or disagree? I'm a fan of movies which were shot on film. And not only because it pretty much guarantees that care was taken with the cinematography. The workflow of careful shot planning, rather than leaving the cameras running and designing the movie in the editing room, seems to be used by thoughtful filmmakers who care for details. What do you think? Which examples spring to mind to support your opinion? Remember that digital only became the norm a little more than 10 years ago. That doesn't mean every film shot before then had more care than the ones in digital. At some point you mentioned a style of movie, characters in confined spaces talking for hours. Pause to swoon, drop a list I beg you. Plus a zillion thanks for exposing me to Sweet Smell of Success and I Claudius. I'm glad you like those, they're great. I love this genre in desperate need of a better name. Chamber pieces, right? I mentioned it in the top 10 top 100 best movies of all time video. I don't care, best title I ever made. Films that take place mostly or preferably entirely in one or a handful of rooms. They're usually based on plays and I add the rule that they must be mostly in real time. At least within a revolution of the sun, as the French neoclassicists would say. Long talky scenes, a few characters. The best is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. You can add Arsenic and Old Lace, Key Largo, Long Day's Journey into Night, 12 Angry Men, obviously, Family Resemblances, The Night of the Iguana, Carnage, Night Mother. Not all masterpieces, but that's a good idea. There's also the great Czechoslovakian film, The Year. Amazing. Love your channel. Nice. I have a couple questions. Based on the past and current state of cinema, how do you think it will be in the future? How do you see AI being implemented on it? I think AI will only replace those who can be replaced. Actors won't. People will not enjoy watching Simons, I think. Maybe I'm being romantic and I have no idea how unbelievably great the technology will be, but for now I don't expect people to, as they say, connect to AI characters. As for writing, the everyday junk we see can easily be done by computers. But the true talent will still be human. I said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. Directors should worry too and brush up their skills. Are you gonna make a movie? Would it be wise? Thanks and Merry Christmas. I hope to in the coming years. It would definitely be wise. You're welcome and Merry Christmas to you too. I should have included this one in the earlier video. Whoops. One of the best film analysis channels on YouTube. Keep up the great work. Thank you, will do. What are your favorite Kurosawa films and why? Ren, because it's King Lear with a Lady Macbeth thrown in for good measure, and it looks like what it looks like. Also love High and Low. A semi-chamber piece that's one of the best uses of scope of all time. I remember I loved that movie even before I noticed good blocking. What are your most overrated, hated films of the classic era? I've always found Charles Chaplin nothing above okay. It always baffled me how much people, serious people who know their shit, worship him. More than admire, but worship him. I've always attributed it to him doing everything. The consummate auteur. He never impressed me though. Not great, not terrible, just Chaplin. As for films I hate, that's a strong word, but maybe... The Apu trilogy. Why do people like that? I hate a few Ozus, and I find most of the rest average. I dislike a good chunk of Rossellini's films. What are your favorite Hitchcock films and why? My favorite Hitchcock is North by Northwest. It has one of the most perfect screenplays. So Ernest Lehman is the major reason. I also love Rear Window, Water is Wet. I need to rewatch Notorious. If you had someone who has never seen a film from the classic era, what film would you give them to watch? A newcomer should always start with Casablanca. It's undislikable. Why do you hate Roma so much? Yeah, I called Roma 3/3 on top of each other trying to pass off as a movie. I still like that jibe. I wouldn't insult a film I don't vividly remember today, like I did in my earlier videos, but Roma has the least interesting story imaginable. The screenplay is so pedestrian, it's easy, lifeless, silly. All the problems of self-satisfied, realistic art house cinema. Can't stand it. I'd have to rewatch it to be more specific though. I imagine I'd enjoy the direction more today, maybe. Cuarón can be showy though. Will you make some video about Kurosawa? Perhaps, I won't say never, but no ideas as of now. When I talk about epics, he'll be mentioned a lot. Will you analyze Dune's direction? Only if it gets nominated for the Oscar of Best Director, and I'm praying that it doesn't. What are the strengths of animation? I say that animation is cinema's great disappointment, because it can create anything, any conceivable and inconceivable thing, yet we limit ourselves to imitations of the real world. The strengths are what we see in the Looney Tunes, in Droopy mostly, surreal humor beyond the realms of sense and the physical. Animation has its best use when it does what is literally impossible. I remember this 3D shot in Beowulf, where there's a spear right next to his eye, and we see it from both angles in one take. I wish animation directors did more of what's impossible. I take it more seriously then. Which modern directors are the closest in style to classical invisible directors like Bergman or Wilder? I always mention Spielberg on this subject. Guillermo del Toro also comes to mind, but I'd have to rewatch his films to be sure. Why nobody is doing deep focus on telephoto when it's so picturesque and beautiful? Like in Ren, Dreams, Throne of Blood? Right? Deep focus in general doesn't remind people of classic films, but of 80s soap operas. So because of decades of television and digital video using it, people ignore more decades of classics using it. Deep focus with telephoto lenses specifically? Don't forget Angelopoulos, he makes jaw-dropping shots like this. The truth is nobody is being taught how to do it or being advised to. Viewers are just accustomed to what you give them. Filmmakers moved away from deep focus because of video. Audiences got used to shallow depth of field. Filmmakers say audiences don't like deep focus and they use it less. It's a vicious cycle. If the mainstream brought it back, people would get used to it within the month. I'd like to add to another person's question and ask, which animated films do you think have the best direction? For me, Prince of Egypt and The Incredibles come to mind. Many fans of animation here. Awkward. I love the work of Zbigniew Rybczynski. Better write this down here. His short film Tango and the 50-minute film The Orchestra are masterpieces. The latter is mostly live action, but still. They're both on YouTube. Best animation director if you ask me. Pixelation. There's this spectacular animation from what might be my native country or not, called The Tragedy of Man, and it looks like you won't believe it. Also on YouTube. What do you think about the work of Paolo Sorrentino? I'm especially curious about The Great Beauty, Youth and the Young Pope. At first it doesn't seem like he would be up your alley, but perhaps I'm wrong. I like him. A lot. The Consequences of Love is his best, probably. He's stylish like he's full Scorsese all the time. Scorsese is not always full Scorsese. I should rewatch The Great Beauty. I loved Youth and the Young Pope. He's over the top, moving the camera as much as possible, stylish editing. Not really a brilliant artist, but never a dull one. That's more than good enough. Same as before goes for Werner Herzog. What do you think about his work? It would be interesting if maybe you did a video comparing the 3 versions of Nosferatu after the new one comes out. Love the Nosferatu idea, love it, I'll seriously consider it. Herzog, I watched his major movies many years ago, so I honestly don't remember them well enough to give a real opinion. As a whole, not talking about direction, I always liked his films. Any favorite short films? The Heart of the World by Guy Maddin, best short ever. There's also this 4-minute stop-motion film on YouTube called Shiny, and I love it. Do you play video games? Do you think there are games with great cinematic direction? I do play video games. If you think about it, games allow you to direct following tracking shots with circling camera motions, don't they? And it's always in deep focus. But then of course we get to cut scenes and it's all normal intensified continuity during dialogue. Those recent God of War games were in long takes, right? Were the dialogue scenes just intensified continuity minus editing, like Birdman? You often refer to shots having painterly compositions. Would you share your favorite painters and paintings? I hope we're not limited to one question. Oh, this one. Here we go. Recently I've become obsessed with this painting by Ilya Repin. And a detail I adore. The proportion is 2.19 to 1. Practically 220 to 1. That's the aspect ratio of 70mm films. Even the shape is attached to gorgeousness. Repin's paintings are all great and very cinematic. David Bordwell wrote a lot about this one. I also love Jacques-Louis David, John William Waterhouse. Basically I prefer neoclassical, academic and pre-Raphaelite artists. I saved some paintings because they're cinematic. Look at this extraordinary use of depth and verticality by Tintoretto. I love war scenes too. There are also portraits I love for their beauty and personality. I could write pages about what I think these people's personalities were like based on their facial expressions and body language. What are your thoughts on animation as a medium, and is there a favorite you could recommend? I'm sure you've seen more anime than me. I'm not knowledgeable on that subject in the slightest. I only started consistently watching Miyazaki recently, and because my girlfriend loves these films. Totoro is the best, she agrees. I'll be introduced to K-dramas soon. Not exactly a question, but generally can we have a discussion of editing and editors, who are the other director of the movie? Yes, I do think I could talk more about editing. I just concentrate more on the stuff that doesn't get talked about or noticed. I intend to make a video about the editing in the films of Peter Greenaway, the most mise-en-scène director in the world today, and I want to talk about his editing. Can you break down in as much detail as possible how you analyze a film and prepare to comment on it? How deep would a commentary or your impression of a film be after a first viewing in comparison to a film you've studied extensively? And what would you recommend people do, watch, read, etc. to be able to do what you do? Basically, what's the gap between a friend and you when the credits say the end? And what would you tell your friend they do so that they bridge that gap in knowledge, analysis and communication? That's a lot. How I prepare to analyze a film. I'm not gonna give as much detail as possible so I can move on someday, but it's basically like this. Suppose it's a simple directing analysis, one movie 10 to 15 minutes. I'll rewatch the film taking notes on my cell phone each instant something feels worth it. I write down the exact minute and second and I end up with a page like this one for the Chinatown video. I call these pages reminders. Here's the one for Sleuth. Hamlet I know so well already I didn't even bother to write down the time codes. I take these fragments I wrote about out of the movie and save them as their own clips. I filed them alongside similar shots. Then I open a document I call structure, which is what exactly I want to say about each shot. Then it's a matter of arranging the right order before writing the video script. On the second question, on a first viewing my impression will include a general idea of what I think about the visual style. How fast is the editing, impressions of the staging, camera, a bit of everything. Some shots will come to mind if the film has any worthy of note. The same for the screenplay. What stands out will call my attention, the rest I'll think about in general, if it makes sense. Once I've studied a film extensively, I'll have a good idea of what types of shots are more common or rare, more details about the editing, the camera. It's not really that different from the first impression, just deeper. With the script, I'll have a good idea of how to split it into sequences. I find that hard to do on a first watch. I'll have a better idea of the film's architecture, you could say. I'll have a better idea about the dialogue, characters' individualities, and word choices, for instance. The books I recommend in the last video are a good way for anyone to think like that. Screenwriting the sequence approach is the best way to change the way you look at screenplays. What do you think of directors who exclusively use the scope aspect ratio? Are there any who pull it off? Exclusively scope? Immediate red flag. Can't think of a single one who never varied and was worth a damn. Even Leone used 185 in his last movie. Can a movie with a weak screenplay be saved by the overall look of the picture and spectacle? I had a professor who said that you can't make a good movie out of a bad screenplay. It's true. I say it can be saved up to a point. It will be a film with great visuals, but never a masterpiece. There are many films with minimal screenplays, and they are considered masterpieces, uniquely because of their visuals. Think of Playtime and The Color of Pomegranates. Their screenplays are not bad, they're just enough. I'll be honest here, I never liked 8.5, but I always found the direction immaculate. I beat around the bush just to say that yes, a weak screenplay can be saved. What are some of your favorite novels, fiction or non-fiction? I already answered that one in the last video. Oh, and I rarely read novels by living authors, but recently I read Mario Vargas Llosa's The Feast of the Goat, and it was amazing! One of the best books I've read in years! Also, do you have any recommendations for worthwhile film theorists, critics or YouTubers to look into? Check the channel Take Me to Your Cinema, the most underrated video essay channel on YouTube. His video on Birdman and Maxophilus is one of the best I've ever seen, and the major reason why I've never made a video on Ophilus. He also made a trilogy of videos about the bad continuity of Dunkirk. Legend. He's not making videos anymore. The algorithm failed him. Don't fail him, check him out. Give him some sugar, he deserves it. I don't know him, by the way. What are your opinions on found footage and related genres? I know you prioritize aesthetics, but I'm curious if you make exceptions for such films. I don't. They can be good story-wise, but I will never say they are well-directed or a good achievement in filmmaking. They are what they are, but they come at the cost of sacrificing qualities I wouldn't do without. You're my favorite film analysis channel, absolutely excellent at what you do. Thank you so much. Your comment makes me truly happy. I already see a lot of people asking some general questions that are interesting, so I'll shoot my shot and ask you about something oddly specific. Have you ever watched the film by Daihachi Yoshida? And would you ever make a video on him in general? Or perhaps some of his better known films like The Kirishima Thing? I have a very personal fondness for his work that would take too long to explain, and I'm not sure if it would make for an interesting video. But I would love to hear your opinions on his films. You're great at articulating criticisms and pointing things out to me that I might otherwise overlook. I had never heard about this director until now. I've never even heard of his better known film. The Kirishima Thing. Sounds like somebody's mother trying to remember the title of The Shawshank Redemption. I just added it to my watch list. Guess I should pay more attention to the Japan Academy Prize. I always presumed the Kinema Junpo Award was the major one. Would you do your own 100 movies to see or 100 films for beginners? I'd love to, but I'd have to watch and re-watch so many films, even if it's just for a clip show video, that you shouldn't expect it for anytime soon. As for films for beginners, I talk about it in my list video, check it out. If you have already, watch it again. Have you seen anything by Raul Ruiz? Of course I have. It's a crime he isn't considered a mandatory director. Like I said in the earlier video, I adore Ruiz. He merges modernist strangeness with classical sophistication. Time Regained and Mysteries of Lisbon are two films I cannot believe were made in the modern age. They're so gracefully perfect, formally and stylistically. So many adverbs. And his screenplays are also great, always about storytelling, stories and stories within stories. I will make a video about his directing style someday, and I could also make a video about his screenplays. Most underrated filmmaker ever. 3 Lives and a Single Death has the absolute best excuse to use after you abandon your family and decide to come back. If you know, you know. What's difficult to grasp about acting? Maybe what is hard to do? And is what is hard always the best choice? I usually find twitches and little things impressive, but is it that simple? Is it even simple? Body language is something I find fascinating. How you can manifest personality from just being there. I approach acting more from the point of view of someone who's impressed more than understands. Chemistry is something I'd love a fat book about because it's something people seldom disagree with, yet nobody can explain. Why do some actors have chemistry and others don't? I want to make a video about line reading someday, because I love how great acting can improve virtually any line of dialogue. How do you have such a broad knowledge on the devices of rhetoric? Is this something you studied at a university or are you an autodidact? On that subject, I'm 100% autodidact. I don't know what the first book I found was, even less what led me to it, but I couldn't stop studying it once I started. Thoughts on Dr. Zhivago. David Lean Epic, one of the highest grossing movies adjusted for inflation, but was not received well by critics at the time. In modern film discussion it is somewhat maligned, forgotten, not in AFI Top 100. But it is in the AFI Top 100, the first list, not the second. It's a film like Gone with the Wind, 12 Angry Men, and It's a Wonderful Life. They're extremely well beloved, they have passionate fans, but they are not considered canonical. They're not mentioned when best films are mentioned, in, say, prestigious lists at least. I find Dr. Zhivago great though. Lean's epics are the best. Oh, and I hated the book. It's one of the best adaptations ever, one that greatly improved the book. Which do you prefer, classic westerns or modern westerns? Classic westerns overall. Modern westerns have more freedom though. What's your top 5 Coppola films? The Godfather Part 2, The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Megalopolis, Dracula, and no idea. Tucker? I confess I still haven't watched Youth Without Youth, Tetro or Twixt. After disagreeing with the world on Megalopolis, I feel more confident too. I'd love to see a response from you to the relatively recent video from the channel Broy This Channel about male weepies. They mostly do narrative analysis, but I thought that video details nicely with some of the things you like to talk about. And I love to hear you give some classical examples of what you think the best male weepies are. I watched that video because of this comment. I also always found Field of Dreams a very tear-inducing movie. You know what should be called a male weepy in my book? Bicycle Thieves. About a father desperately trying to provide for his family and failing repeatedly. How can I analyze movies like you do? Watch them. Thousands of them. Actively. Would you direct a short film employing a few of your favorite directing techniques and explain your reasoning in a behind-the-scenes video? You can hide your face in a mask if you want, but we'd love to see you in action. That would be excellent. If the money was given me by magic. I have one. Did you always love film? And if not, then was there a point when it clicked and you fell in love or something like that? Love your channel as a studying director. Thanks for the excitement. Well, yes, I've always loved film. Well, bye. Why does the black guy always die first in horror movies? Does he? I've always found that a commonplace statement that's just believed. When I played Until Dawn, he did die first and I thought, no, that's such a cliché. I got no time to look up the TV tropes page. Any slasher historians who can elaborate if that's even true? Your channel is a joy to all film lovers. Your videos are informative, educational, witty, fun and interesting. A true rarity on the entire YouTube. May you have 1 million subscribers and more, you deserve it. I'm blushing. I wish I could have copied the emojis, this message is so friendly. What's your opinion on omnibus anthology movies? What does it take to make a good movie of that subgenre? I find them risky. Usually there's one great segment and most are mediocre. The best ever made is Wild Tales. All stories are strong and different enough to never feel repetitive. There's this great Italian film, The Birds, the Bees and the Italians by Pietro Germi, Golden Palm winner, that's also one of the best. It seems the best anthology films have a single director and writer or group of writers. Those that invite a bunch of different filmmakers usually suffer from varying degrees of interest. Ever seen No Henry's Full House? It's bizarre how Howard Hawks made the worst and most boring story, while Gian Negulesco absolutely killed it in every way. One thing for the whole movie seems to get better results. What are some of the city-defining movies? Where a certain city is best described through the movie or is a character in some way. I never think like this. As in, this movie shows New York well, Chicago, Paris well, or poorly. I just take it as the location of the story and never think about how that connects to the city in real life. I am Cuba for Havana, La Dolce Vita for Rome, I'm just spitballing now. What are the best movies about movie-making business and process in your opinion, and how important are they, and are they verisimilitudinous? Good health to you and your loved ones, greetings from the Balkans, keep enjoying the movies, dude. Verisimilitudinous, that should be a word. I wouldn't say movies about movie-making are important. The best ones are Sunset Boulevard, Mulholland Drive, The Player. Not an original list, I know. Truffaut's Day for Night is perhaps the most verisimilitudinous. Because everything is so casual, unimportant, and to make a film that doesn't even look good. It's very much a film about how the art is lost during the process. All the best to you and your loved ones as well. Now next. I am interested in your views on Lost in Translation and Paper House. I watched Lost in Translation when I was about 13, so I don't remember anything. Never seen Paper House. Thoughts on Stanley Kramer? A quote of him was that he didn't always have a camera in the right place, but his heart was. Does heart matter when making movies? I love his judgment at Nuremberg. His camera is surprisingly modern for the era. David Bordwell said it was ahead of its time for better or worse. I also love It's a Mad World, the first Criterion Blu-ray I ever bought. His direction was always solid. Whoever said that meant his screenplays, as they always do. About heart, I don't think it matters when making a movie. If it leads to creativity and quality, then excellent. If it doesn't compensate for poor quality. Also, 70s American movies are the best, are they not? No! I say 70s American cinema are just the Nouvelle Vague in the USA, and it lasted just as long. What is your favorite pasta? That's easy! Idris Kijli. I've been eating it my whole life long. How does a filmmaker or producer know the quality of a film based on the script? You have to have a good imagination, I guess. Watch the film in your mind as you read it. Isn't it second nature? And a good screenplay is fun to read. The screenplay alone has the characters, the dialogue, the conflict, the story, the structure, everything. Do you think a good idea is necessary for a film to be good? If you have a great idea for a movie, is it guaranteed that the movie will be at least okay in your opinion? A good movie is never guaranteed. Never underestimate mankind's capacity to fuck up. Man shall fuck good things up. It's in the Bible somewhere, or should be. It's not even guaranteed it will be okay. A good idea is necessary for a film to be good though. If not a script that's necessarily good, at least a good visual idea. Is a cliché that works a good idea? Depends on what you think. What do you think is the best use of intensified continuity? Many. Michael Mann's Ferrari was a marvelous case. If you're expecting me to say one single film, I'll go with Stone's JFK. It's so intensified continuity, it even uses many aspects of uncontinuity editing. You can't get more intensified than that. And I'm gonna tell you one of the best in intensified continuity. John McTiernan. Love this channel. Nice. What movies do you like that are objectively bad? And what movies do you hate that are objectively good? This is a safe space for the word objective. I liked Trap very much, but every time I talk about it, I make fun of it. I don't have a positive thing to say except that the story is thrilling. Maybe tying up to the good idea question before? Maybe a good idea was enough here. I'm not sure I'd call it objectively bad. For that you'd have to go to something that is poorly made. Or at least a guilty pleasure. Bresson has a lot of thinking behind his films and I still hate them. Many would call them objectively good, but I still hate his cadaveric style. Thought on Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography. It's good. Top 3 each decade. Thanks. You know I love lists, but that's too much hard work from my part against too little work from your part. You couldn't even bother to say thank you? Do you want to be a screenwriter, director, or both? Both. Which is Friedkin's best movie and why is it Sorcerer? Though William Friedkin is my spirit animal, Sorcerer is his only film I watched anytime recently. I didn't enjoy it that much. I was mostly wondering why someone would risk his money, reputation and life to make it. It's not malaria worthy. That scene when they cross the bridge though, fucking amazing. One of the most thrilling sequences I've ever seen. I need to rewatch his films to give a proper answer. And I've always wanted to watch the original version of The Exorcist, because every version I've ever found was the version you've never seen. So I'd like to watch the version I did see, because it's the one I've never seen. Where do you get your ideas from? Movies? How do you analyze a film like as a whole, directing, screenwriting, everything? I do it the way you see in my videos? Do you appreciate silent movies as you seldom discuss or mention them? Maybe most viewers haven't noticed it yet, but I mostly make videos about dialogue scenes. So you can see how silent films are not usually the right material. I do appreciate them, obviously. Many of the latest Eat the Rich movies are pretentious and kinda suck, yes or yes. Triangle of Sadness, the menu, the platform. Are those my options? So yes, I like the menu though. Dude, you deserve the best. Give us a way to process the info in your head, how you keep your taste fresh. Thank you, I have no idea what to answer or what the question even was, but I liked it. If the question is how does one keep one's taste fresh? I had this rule in my teenage years when rental stores existed. I would rent 4 to 6 films every week, and they all had to be by different directors, from different countries, and different decades. Today I still make sure to watch at least 5 movies per week, and at least one must be silent, one Asian, one recent, and one over 2.5 hours long. These can mix. What are some good Indian movies you would recommend someone to introduce them to Indian movies? I'm still a noob in Indian cinema. Look at all these big names I still haven't seen. I go the easy way, Amir Khan. Say 3 Idiots and Dangal. How would you pursue your film education if you were 25 years old again? If I were only 6 years younger? How old do you think I am? I had already graduated film school by then. The same way? What are the criteria a movie needs to impress you? I like that one. Basically, it needs to look like hard work was put into it. The screenplay must have been a pain in the ass to write. The direction must have required extreme examination of the screenplay and locations and characters. If it looks like anyone could write it, like it was written fast, or if it looks like they just pointed and shot, I'm not buying it. I want to see blood, sweat and tears on the screen. Usually I disagree with everything Truffaut says, but I agree with this quote. Is it your original sound you are using? Is this another voice filter question? What an odd way to phrase it. What you think about classic Polish cinema? Vaida is great, the Sienkiewicz adaptations too. Passenger is terrific, Knife in the Water, Mother Joan of the Angels, Wojciech Haas, great cinema. Never seen anything before the 50s though. Honestly, after your Greek tragedy video, I just want you to tear into Pasolini and any other art house directors you hate. Also, what are your thoughts on films that use visual and special effects as part of the filmmaking approach? This little group you made there is great. I got nothing against special effects adding to the visual language. I love a film that tries to be different. Zeman's films look like nobody else's. What is the best directed film in your opinion? Someone once said I should make a new Behold the Perfect Screenplay, but about direction, and that it should be about the rules of the game. I couldn't counter-argue that tip. That's a perfect choice. I'm not gonna start listing or I'll be here all day. Lola Montez, Sunset Boulevard. Are there different standards for reviewing a big movie as opposed to a lower budget film? If it's a student film, you gotta be forgiving. They're learning, they're limited, it's another game. But in actual cinemas, film festivals and such, I look at them the same. How strong is the script? How much does the direction add? If you wanna play in the big league, take the heat. If your film cost a fortune, show some effort. Who is the best active filmmaker without any Oscar right now? Peter Greenaway, who bizarrely won a BAFTA. Why do you like old films so much? 'Cause they're the best? Did you hear what I said in any video? What of playwrights who also wrote for the screen such as Tennessee Williams and Harold Pinter? What of them? Do you attend the cinema often? At least once a week. What's your thoughts on Wim Wenders' films and films made by John Cassavetes? Just curious? Wim Wenders made one masterpiece after the other. He reached such a summit that he finally said screw it and dedicated the rest of his life to worthless nothings. For me, Cassavetes' films are torture. Torture. I'm not exaggerating when I say The Killing of a Chinese Bookie was one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. Where do you fall with judging a film based on what it is? For example, Joe Dirt is one of my favorite comedies. It's heartwarming, funny, and the plot is pretty entertaining. It's certainly not a Michael Mann movie, but what kind of merit does it have in film? Are certain movies that nail what they are trying to do, that maximize their potential for that specific story doomed to be poorly received? Is a 7 out of 10 because that's the limit of the film a bad thing? Or are people way too pretentious and can't enjoy good fun, thereby also missing the entire point? Weird question, I know. When Joe Dirt review? I haven't seen Joe Dirt. It's good to have a comedy you enjoy so much. Of course it's okay to enjoy films that aim at nothing but entertainment. As if that were a small thing. I'm more of the masterpiece approach myself. I seek the films that try to be perfect works of art. Comedies can achieve it. Roger Ebert never minded giving full marks to a film that achieved its specific goal. But ultimately, a film must look like it tried. Who's your favorite actor before the 60s and method acting started becoming popular? Favorite as in not the one I consider the best? I'll go with John Wayne. If I go for acting ability, it's most definitely Humphrey Bogart. Discord server when? Never. I haven't got the time to maintain it. What do you think about the theoretical work of geometry? I haven't read him enough. And he wrote so much. These theory-heavy theorists come off as too abstract for me. I don't care about the philosophy of cinema. What is cinema? Reality or a recreation of reality? This doesn't matter. Those 3 layers of meaning, physical, character, and theoretical or something. I should read his work though, so thanks for reminding me. Here's a wild and random one. In your opinion, what are the top 10 heist caper films of the 60s, and why? Whole video answers are accepted, of course. Have I even seen 10 heist films from the 60s? The Sicilian Clan is the best. Any number can win. A couple Melvilles, Top Copy, The League of Gentlemen, that will have to do. 7 Thieves is awful. Which film do you prefer, Alien or Aliens? Also, gotta say I'm a big fan of the channel, you've helped me discover some of my favorite older films such as The Big Country and All About Eve. I'm glad you enjoy them. I watched Alien and Aliens only once and as a teen. I remember I preferred Aliens, but in my mind now I prefer Alien. I will rewatch them someday. I'm saying that a lot, but there are many movies in the world. A couple questions. What's your favorite animated movie? Maybe Totoro. It's very recent, but I want to promote The Peasants here. That film was perfect. What's the best hero's journey film? I'm gonna read this question as what's the best character arc, because that's one I have an answer for. Speaking of Poland, it's the Sienkiewicz adaptation The Deluge. You'll know that film for its famous sword duel. What you don't know is that the loser is the hero and he has the greatest character arc in the history of literature. We all know the answer to that one question. You're Canadian. Québécois, tabarnak. Can you start putting the titles of the movies you show in your videos? So many times I've thought that's a great shot, I want to see that movie, but no use. That takes way more time than you imagine. Oh, it's just a little text. Those little texts add up. I've had videos with over 100 films. I wonder if you watched my video about horror films and my one about mirrors. Those are the ones where I did it, in the subtitles. I'll try to do it the next time I make a video featuring many films, but I don't promise I'll keep it up. What's your favorite animated film? I'm gonna change the channel's name to Live Action Wise. Your hard work proved. Okay. Do you like Antonioni's trees or no? Best fucking trees. Most misunderstood trees of all time. Every time he films a tree, I think, damn, that's a damn fine tree. How can Saris fail to see the treeness of those trees? Do you really hate Ken Loach's films? I think I saw you slag him off once, but the man is a genius. Surely you can admit that, even if he's not to your taste. This whole not to one's taste excuse is such a cop-out. My taste is good filmmaking. Ken Loach does not make films, he makes political pamphlets. His intention is to give collective awareness to social issues. It's noble, I respect it. But get the hell out of cinema. How is he a genius? What does he do, filmmaking-wise, that's above average? His screenwriter, Paul Leverty, he's the real MVP. Everything worthwhile is in his characters, never in Loach's indifferent filmmaking. I can't figure out where your accent is coming from. I come from a little village under the shadow of the Pispaloo. There we all sound like this. Why are you mentioning so little directors of today? Thanks. What the? I mention directors of today all the time. Why do people write questions for channels they don't even pay attention to? Do you like Cassavetes? I like it when he blows up in De Palma's The Fury. Given that, for example, the bulk of Amadeus is related by Salieri, and is henceforth from the viewpoint of an unreliable narrator, to what degree, and possibly in what ways, does the erasure of the narrators in film impact both critical and popular reception of them? For example, again using Amadeus' criticism of the ahistorical aspects, such as the composition of the Requiem, the details of Mozart's death and burial, and his relationship with Salieri, are inherently tainted with the narration by Salieri, and by his experiencing a form of mental illness implied to be derived from guilt, and also from tertiary syphilis. Why should we trust his details when he is, as a result of his circumstances, wrong? This also reminds me of the degree to which all narratives are inherently biased to some degree or other. Don't tell this to the historian YouTubers, but I don't care about historical accuracy in movies. All that matters is telling a good story. That's cinema. Teaching history is optional. Roger Ebert said it best in his great JFK Great Movie Review. In Amadeus, there is nothing indicating that Salieri's story is false. There are no contradictions, backtrackings, no instance of the priest even questioning or doubting him. It's not at all like the films that actually use unreliable narrators, like The Usual Suspects or Stage Fright. You have to know the history of Mozart to even consider that it's a case of an unreliable narrator. And that's knowledge outside the movie. It's an okay reading, but it's a movie theory. Amadeus is not worse for being historically inaccurate, and not better for having an excuse that justifies its historical inaccuracy. Done! January 24 we'll be back with our regular programming. If you have any more questions, get me 50,000 more subscribers. Thank you for sticking around for... Holy shit, did you stick around that long? Extra thank you, bye bye.